I hope you came to church this morning, because if you didn't, you just got churched. You don't even know it. God's working this place. Man, I'm excited about what he's doing. I just got to move my stuff over here for a minute. Just bear with me. Got a little illustration today. If you were here last week and you got to witness, hi, baby, the illustration. Oh, you going to help me out? Ben and White, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sweetheart. Good job. Thank you. That wasn't planned. So if you were here last week, I tricked you. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you up front, this ain't a trick. If you were here last week and you saw or you watched online, because I know so many of you are joining us online from just all over the United States, and that's just incredible that you would even take time to do that and be a part of what God is doing here. But if you watched last week, or if you got called up last week, or you were here, I had an illustration, and it was a magic trick, but it turned out I tricked you with the trick. It really wasn't a magic trick, but it was part of the purpose or the point that I was trying to make. So today, I've got another illustration, and it went over really, really well at the 8:30 service, so we've set the bar high. You're just going to have to rise to the occasion. So it went over well. The thing went good. It's not a trick, like it's a real thing. So here's what we're going to do. We kind of worked out some kinks at the morning service, and it was all flawless. So I'm going to have Chad put 45 seconds up on the board for us, and I'm going to give you the same amount of time that the other teams had this morning. But here's what I need. I need 2 people to participate in this illustration. But here's the prerequisite for your participation. You got to be a competitive person, all right? You got to be, okay, we're getting there. You got to be a competitive person. Like, I want you to be so competitive that if you don't win this illustration, that's going to mess up your rest of your day. It's just going to totally just take you out of everything that you had planned to do because you got let down and you didn't win the illustration. I need that kind of like intensity with this game because we're not messing around. This is a sermon, people. This is for real. So 2 volunteers. Don't make me pick them, but I need a couple of volunteers, just some competitive, excited people. Yeah, okay. Oh, he done got it. Oh, okay. Well, y'all just well, come on then. Well, come on. Didn't even pick them. Y'all got up. You know you competitive if you just get up. All right, come over here. One person on each side of the table. So here's the thing. No pressure, Alex. But if you lose this, BJ. Oh. Well, you're going to have to get over it because I need you. Nobody else talks to me during a message, and I need you to be able to talk to me. So no pressure. If she loses and you win this thing, you have to do what she does from all the way from back there because she helps me preach better. So you got to. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. This morning at the 8:30 service, we had a beautiful young woman here from Sweden. Her name's Alice Kahn. She stayed with Dan and Amy while she was doing something at Western last year, and so she was with us for a few months, so it was cool. Wasn't even expecting her. Sweden beat the United States 1-0, so, but right now we're playing U.S. against U.S., so we're good to go. Here's the rules of the game. We have blocks in here. They're regular blocks. We have background music, too. I didn't even ask for that. They're kids' blocks or children's blocks. You probably remember this. Yes. This is probably a long time ago for you, but this is, but they're all the same size. There are some of these longer ones, and that's just to help you out if you choose to use them. But here's the object of this game, and you've only got 45 seconds to do it in church. Even if you come from like a Episcopalian tradition where you don't talk much in church, I got to have you talk today. So when the timer gets to 10, we got to go 10, 9, 8, like it needs to shake the table, okay? When it needs to be that loud. Your object is you got to stack these blocks like a tower, okay? Not lengthwise, we're going for height, okay? Whoever ends this game with the highest stack wins the illustration, okay? I mean, big things at stake right now. You win the illustration, but here's the other kicker. If one of your towers falls during the setup, during the 45 seconds, the time stops and the illustration is over, okay? All right, so, whoa.
Oh, baby.
Oh, sorry, I'm excited. All right, so I'm gonna say ready, set, go. The timer's gonna go, and then you gotta grab from the bucket and make your stack. Ready? On your mark. Get set, go. 40 seconds. You better get with it. 37, 36, 35. Tallest stack wins, tallest stack. 30 seconds left. That's it. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Oh, you gonna mess it up already. 26 seconds. 25. 24. Oh, wait, 20 seconds. Ah! That's all right. I'm glad that you're not. Huh? You're going to have to hold up. Thank you all for playing. Alex is our winner. Y'all give them a hand. All right, y'all can go sit down. No, just leave it right there. It's going to be a great illustration now. Thank you so much. So, yeah, I'll pick it up. Thank you. So here's the thing with blocks, and I know this is kid kind of stuff, and it's elementary, but when it comes to stacking blocks end on end, like to make a tower, if you will, and that's kind of what we did here this morning, alignment is what makes the difference on how high you can stack the blocks, Amen. Right? It's alignment that's making the difference in how high you can go. That's what happened with BJ's blocks. She was stacking one on the other, but they weren't exactly in line with each other. And then one got put on there, and all of a sudden the whole thing started to tilt. And she even tried to catch it. Like she tried to mitigate it in the moment, just the fallout of the blocks, but they fell down anyways. Because that's the thing with alignment. Alignment is it's crucial. The more out of line that we are, the more misaligned we are, the more limited. Even in things like this, the more limited we are in our possibility. Like misalignment in some blocks limits the possibility of how high they can go. Misalignment in your life, like that limits how high you get to go and how far you end up going. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at your neighbor, and I just want you to share with your neighbor, whichever one you want to share with, pick a favorite one, share with your neighbor the title of my message today. Tell them we're talking about alignment. We're talking about alignment. We're talking about alignment. Yeah. And not alignment with blocks. That's just the illustration. What we're talking about when it comes to alignment is being aligned with the things of God. Amen. Right? So here's what I know coming to the table, and I think that we can all be on the exact same page when it comes to this. We know what it's like to come to God wanting. Right? I mean, we know what it's like to want something from Jesus, to need something from Jesus. We understand, and I'm not talking about Santa Claus kind of faith. I'm not talking about like you go ask and hope that God will do something or God's doing your bidding. Not that kind of faith. I mean, we all know what it's like for those of us who follow Jesus to want something and it not be a Christmas kind of thing, but it be a kind of thing where it's like, God, you got to do something. I need you to do something. I'm pleading with you to do something. I'm begging you to do something, and then God, if you don't show up and do it, like I don't know what's going to happen next, right? We know what it is to want something from Jesus, but there's a difference between wanting something from him, believing that he can do it, knowing that he's got the power and the ability, and being aligned with him. So not just wanting something from Jesus, but actually living the kind of life that is aligned with Jesus, being the kinds of people who are aligning ourselves up under the authority of the Father. That kind of thing will change everything. That's right. Like that kind, when you align yourself and you move beyond just an understanding that God can do some things and that you got to have him do some things, but when you move beyond just that surface level thing and you actually align yourself with his power, man, that opens up doors that don't get opened up any other way. And that's what's happening in the story. That's what's powerful about it. I think it's one of the things that amazed Jesus, and that's what I want us to get to. And I got to spend a little bit of time getting to it, but I want you to stick with me this morning because there's really good stuff in this. I'm not even going to call it free chicken today. This is real chicken. This is our meal right now. This is worth chewing on and taking some time with. So I want to get to it, and I'll work this kind of in as we go. So let's go back to verse 1 through 4. Verse 1 through 3. It says, when Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. There a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. So let me talk for a few minutes this morning about centurions, because the term centurion, the title centurion, is pretty much a title that's exclusively used like within the context of the church. I mean, you don't hear the word of the title centurion being thrown around really outside the church unless you're taking a military history class or the history of the Roman Empire or something like that, or you're watching some kind of Roman history thing on Discovery Channel or History Channel. I mean, the word centurion, it just doesn't get used quite that often. So I want to start like kind of at a ground level, because I think understanding who the guy is key to understanding what God is doing in this passage. And sometimes we want God to do things, and we have this expectation of God to do things, and then but we miss the understanding part. And understanding is always important. And so a centurion is a Roman officer of the Roman army who's in charge of 100 guys. In the ancient world, that's a lot. Like, if you understand something about history, they aren't the most powerful people in the Roman army. Matter of fact, legions are 6,000 men. Centurions are in charge of 100 people that are a part of a unit that is a much larger unit than themselves, like a unit of 6,000 men. So these legions don't seem like it if you compare them to that. But Caesar used these centurions and their 100 guys, man, all over the empire to maintain control and stability. So these guys were really, really powerful men. This centurion had 100 guys. He was stationed at Capernaum, which meant like he was the authority of Rome at Capernaum. I mean, talk about alignment. There is an alignment that exists between the centurion and Caesar in Rome, although they probably have never met each other, that gives them incredible power. Like, even though Rome is thousands of miles away from where the centurion is, the alignment is so strong that he's able to exercise power and orders that are coming from Rome, and people submit to it. Like, that's how powerful this guy is. These guys have this incredible power, not because they're the strongest people in Capernaum. The centurion is not powerful because he carries a bigger sword than everybody else. He doesn't even get his power because he's got 100 men to do his bidding. There was way more just regular people, Jews at Capernaum, than there were 100 guys. How do they have so much power? It's because of where their power is derived. It's the authority that they're under. They fall under the authority of Caesar, and that's a lot bigger than themselves. Now, here's the thing when it comes to authority and to power, and especially for centurions. But centurions, they weren't people who were liked within the empire, especially if you were one of the people that Rome was occupying. Like, if you were part of the country that he was occupying. These people, man, they weren't under Rome's rule, but they found themselves under Rome's rule because Rome came in there and took it over. Like, we don't even have anything to compare it to. No one has ever come into our country, the United States of America, and took us over, like took control of the nation and made us submit to somebody else's rule or authority. That's never happened to us. It's hard to even imagine, but that's what's happened to them. And this is the crazy part. So you've got these guys kind of in charge of Capernaum, if you will, but he's not using his power or his authority to oppress the people that he's been placed over. Man, he uses his power and his authority to actually help the people that he's been placed over. I mean, this is a centurion with a heart. This guy, like, he actually cares about people. I mean, we read the story a while ago. They are the people that the centurion sends to Jesus. Man, they are fighting for the centurion. That's crazy. The guy who's fighting against them, who represents an empire that's fighting against them, man, they're fighting for him with Jesus, and they are begging Jesus to come and do something for the centurion. I mean, that gives us insight to how great of a guy this was. I mean, this guy cared about people. No matter how powerful he was, no matter how powerful Rome had made him, there was one thing that he didn't have the power to do, and that was to heal his servant. Right? Like, that was, no matter how powerful the man was because of Rome, no matter how much he could exercise over people's lives, no matter how good he had been to the people around him, like, the one thing he could not do, he couldn't heal a servant. And he realized that. I mean, this guy had a lot of money. Let me show you one more thing, because I just think it's neat. If after the service, don't do it right now, after the service, Google the synagogue at Capernaum. Just Google it. You can look at the ruins. The ruins are magnificent. It was a 2-story synagogue that the ruins are there today. This guy, like the centurion that we're talking about in this story, built that synagogue. You could go there today and walk around in the synagogue that Jesus taught at Capernaum. That's crazy. This guy built the synagogue. That's pretty, I mean, talk about building something. Oh, y'all did that. Look, that's amazing. Yeah, you could, we don't know one stone for sure that Jesus stepped his foot on, right? But if you went there and you just were careful to walk over every inch of every stone, you will have placed your feet where Jesus walked. That's pretty, I mean, that's just an incredible thing, I think, to think about, that you could put your feet where Jesus for sure placed his feet at some point. This guy, the centurion, he built that. No matter how much power or money or prestige that he had to do these incredible things for the people, like the one thing he couldn't do was heal his servant. No amount of money could take care of that. And I'm just telling you, man, this'll give a lot of clarity for some of you and will bring a lot of peace if some of you can just grab a hold of this concept. There are some things that you cannot change. Like there are some things that you cannot change. And my next line was gonna be, so why are you still trying to change things that you can't change? But I took that out and I didn't put it in there, so just don't pretend like I didn't even say that. Because it's easy, right? It's easy to look at the story and go, well, of course you can't change that, because some of you have been there and you've dealt with that. You've had a loved one that had a disease or had a virus or something, and there was no stopping it. Like doctors tried to mitigate the circumstance, they tried to alleviate the pain. And the symptoms, and maybe they did for a little while, but eventually, like the disease, the virus, or whatever it was, it caught up and it ended up costing someone you know, someone you loved, their life. And it just was what it was. It happened. And nobody could change it. Nobody could do, like that kind of change. I mean, that's obvious, right? But do I have anybody in here, just real quick, where you can raise your hand. Do I have any people pleasers in here? Okay, y'all take a look around. Everybody that just raised their hand, they are for real a people pleaser. That's why they raised their hand. They wanted to please me. I asked them to do it, and they're like, okay, I'll raise my hand up. Like we are for real people pleasers. It's one of my struggles. But do you realize something? But you can't please everybody. Like that is one thing that I'm telling you right now that you cannot change. You can't make everybody happy. You can't please everybody. And yet people like me try again and again and again. You want to mess up your alignment? Just go to try to do something that you cannot do. That messes up you want to talk about getting things just wonky and in a position to just completely collapse in your life. Man, start stepping out of alignment with what, just look at your neighbor and say, stay in your lane. Yeah, because that's what we're talking about. When you get out of your lane and try to fix somebody else's lane, man, that will mess things up quick. Not for them, for you. Like you're trying to make them happy. You're trying to please them. You're trying to bring some sort of satisfaction in your life or in their life. And the whole time you're costing yourself everything. Because when you get out of alignment, right? When you get out of your lane, man, you end up spending power and resources and energy and nothing comes of it. Because you already know you can't please, somebody's gonna lose, right? If you can't please everybody, somebody's walking away unhappy. There are some things that you can't change. And when the alignment is messed up, like when things get wonky, just to use a technical term, when things get out of alignment, man, it messes up the power flow. And it's not that things aren't there that's not powerful, it messes up the flow of it. There's some things that you can't change, no matter what you try. Do you also realize, and I know that this is a struggle for some of you in the room, but do you realize that you can't change what people think? Amen. You can't. You cannot change what people think about you, what people think about what you're doing, what people think about the life that you can't change their mind. You cannot change what people think. Isn't it crazy that we try to do that junk all the time? I mean, how many of you all know a husband has tried to change a wife? How many of you all know a wife has tried to change a husband? Wow, way more participants of that. How many of you all know it doesn't work? Just go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah, because you can't change people, and we understand that, right? We know that you can't change the way people think. You can't change the way people act or behave. We understand that. And yet we exhaust so much of our time trying to control and manipulate behavior to get what we want. Because we're trying to bring people into alignment with our will and our way. And the whole time that we do it, we mess up our alignment with our Heavenly Father. The whole time we're trying to bring people into alignment with what we want, with what we think is right, with the way that we have decided is the right way, we mess up our alignment with His way. Because maybe God ain't gonna do it your way. And maybe God doesn't really care what you think. And maybe God has a different approach. And maybe God has a different plan. And maybe His way isn't your way. I mean, even David, the psalmist, he understood that, right? He said, Lord, your ways are higher than my own. You know what that means? That means His ways are higher than my own. Amen. I mean, that means you can't think with that kind of lofty idea that God is thinking at. If His ways are higher, then His ways are higher. So maybe His way isn't your way. But is it not amazing that we still try to change people? And the problem at the end of the day is that it messes up this alignment, this lane of power, if you will, through which God is moving and God is working, and we think it's just about them and us, but it's limiting the power of God in our life. There's some things that we can't change, and I mean, it comes down to recognizing, hey, you know what? Some things just have to be given over to God. Some of you, you're trying to find peace for your life right now. Listen to me. You're trying to find peace. You don't call it peace, but that's what you're looking for. Because if you can get everybody to do what you want, right? If you can get everybody to just kind of to line up in your will and in your way, then you think that that's going to bring peace to everything, at least in your heart and in your mind. And we're fighting for a peace, trying to change somebody. And listen to me. Man, if you would give that to Jesus, you would find the peace that you're trying to get out of that person. Even if they never change, you can still live at peace. Because some things you can't change, and you may never change them. You may never change what you don't like about them, and that's fine. But what you ought to do, instead of trying to change them and trying to get out of your lane and in somebody else's lane and do what someone else is called to do, or do what somebody else is meant to do, man, instead of all that happening, if you would just give it to Jesus, that would be a game changer for you. If you would just let Him handle it, if you could just have enough confidence in God that you can say, okay, God, I really can't do it. I'm not trying to be lazy. I got to give it to you. Because I'm recognizing I can't do anything else about this. I can't do anything else with them. Lord, I'm laying it in your hands. And you would find peace that you can't get any other way if you would give it to God. Sometimes it's obvious. The centurion, I think it's obvious because, I mean, it's the ancient world. People die of less than what they die of today all the time in the ancient world. So it makes sense that he would go to Jesus. Let me point out one more thing, and then I want to continue in the story. The centurion, you know how sometimes that we hope that God will come through with something, but we're not really sure if He will. We just kind of hope for it. Like, man, I just hope God does this, or man, I hope that God does a thing. And we have these hopes about things. That's not the centurion. That's us a lot of times, but it's not the centurion. The centurion, he knows that Jesus can do something. Like, he's not hoping that God can heal his servant. He knows that God can heal his servant in Christ Jesus. He knows that. He sends people to Jesus to ask Jesus to come and heal his servant. It's not a matter of him, hoping or knowing. He absolutely knows. He wants to see if God will do what he knows that God can do. See, there's a difference in what God can do and what God will do. There's a difference in what God is able to do and what we want him to do. Sometimes they line up, sometimes they don't. Sometimes God is doing a thing that we can't fathom or understand, and I don't know if that's in play here, but I certainly know that he sees that Jesus can do this. He knows that Jesus can do this. He understands that Jesus is able to do what he cannot do, and so he just sends some people to ask Jesus to see if Jesus will do what he is asking for him to do. Verse 4, and when they came to Jesus, they pleaded. Everybody say pleaded. They pleaded earnestly with him. This man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. Verse 6, so Jesus went with them. I love that detail of the story. that Jesus goes with these people? Like, what would it take for you to get Jesus to stop doing whatever Jesus is doing and him to go with you? Like, to me, that's incredible about the story. Jesus just finishes the Sermon on the Mount. It is the most renowned sermon in the world. I don't know how Jesus felt after he got done preaching the Sermon on the Mount. I know how I feel after I get done preaching sometimes, and I'm not trying to compare myself to Jesus, but Jesus is 100% God, but he's also 100% human, which that means he feels things the way we feel things, and he gets tired the way we get tired. I can only imagine after the Sermon on the Mount, people, like, I'm guessing he wanted to rest, because that's what I want to do when I get done preaching. I mean, I'm just guessing that after all that power went out, after all the conversations that must have gone on after the Sermon on the Mount, maybe Jesus is just trying to get to a place where he can be alone for a little bit. I mean, we have no idea. But what we do know is that the moment he steps into Capernaum, some elders of the Jews come after him and they start pleading with Jesus, and Jesus goes with them. That's just incredible to me. Whatever that Jesus was going to do, he stopped doing to go with them. And why? Like, how did that even happen? Because they pleaded. I'm afraid we've forgotten how to plead. Like, I don't know if we even teach that anymore. Man, I think we've gotten comfortable with asking and expecting, but we don't plead with God to do things the way the church used to plead. We've forgotten how to play. We've become so casual, and maybe it's because we're in an Instagram world and we want things like in an instant, and we expect God to move the way culture moves, and so we pray instant kind of prayers, and if God don't answer them right away, we're upset and willing to walk away. And sometimes God doesn't work in an instant. It seems like he's working in an instant, but it turns out God has been at work all along in it to bring this thing about. And sometimes when it doesn't happen on our timetable, then we become frustrated and we get bitter and we get angry and we don't understand how God could work this way, and why is he going to use that person, and why is he going to work in their life and not my life, and I'm being faithful, but God, they're not being faithful at all, and God, you still use them, and great things are happening for them, but they're not happening for me. And we get all worked up and we get all tore up because God ain't doing it on our table and on our timeline. And maybe we've just become disconnected with the heart of God. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe we've gotten out of line with that, but maybe part of it is that we're just not pleading to see God move. Amen. It doesn't say that the elders of the Jews went up to Jesus and said, hey, Jesus, the centurion, man, he's got a servant, needs some healing. We'll see you later. I'm going over here. We've got to go to the market. It's papayas on sale, and we're going to get some of that before it's all out. And then they just, like, it's not a drive-by, right? Hey, Jesus, I know that you know all things, and we can make things known. So if I just tell you one time and tell you quietly, quickly, and move on, I'll be on my way, and you'll do your thing. So, yeah, I don't miss out on the papaya sale that's happening at the... Not papayas, right? He's pleading. That's what it says. It says that they you know what pleading is? It's begging. I wonder if we don't beg because we become too prideful. You know? I mean, I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died and gave that right to me. I mean, I'll stand up next to you and defend her still today. Because there ain't no doubt I love this place, right? I mean, I wonder if a little bit of that has gotten into our faith and we become prideful, and so we won't beg. Because we passed the guy at Walmart, you know the one I'm talking about, that sits on the bucket all day, and we're like, why can't that guy get a job? I got a job. I provide. Man, my life, it comes out of my hands, and the reason why I've got money in my wallet is because I'm willing to go to work and work for it. This guy, he just begging from everybody, but no, I go to work, and so since we're in a culture where it's like, no, you go to work, and these people who are begging, they're less than somehow, or they're not as worthy as you because you work yourself for a living, and you provide for all the things that you have. Little do we know that, man, God is actually at work in all of that, especially if you belong to him and you are not your own person and you are not providing by your own hands, that God is making all that, because then one thing can happen and you won't be your provider anymore, right? So God can move at any time, but we look at people like that and go, nah, I don't want to be that guy, so I'm not a beggar. But if you don't know how to beg, if you don't know how to plead, listen, you need to learn. Because there are some things that you are not going to experience with God until you learn how to plead. There are some things that God just is not going to do in you and through you until you learn how to plead. And you know why I know that? Because hungry people beg. Thirsty people beg. Amen. People who can't beg. And part of coming to the realization that only God can is realizing you can't. Part of what it means to be filled in a way that only God can fill you is understanding that what you hunger for can only come from Him. And I wonder if we're too busy eating other things that we don't come with a hunger for Him. That we're too busy feeding on other stuff that we show up and we don't need to plead because we feel like our food's coming from somewhere else. We don't need to plead because we feel like we got drink coming from somewhere else. We don't need it from God because we can get it with our own hands. And there are some things that God wants to do in your life, but you ain't going to get it because you casually ask. Man, Jesus isn't always going to go with you into something that you're about to go into just because you casually think He ought to while you kind of do your own thing down here and God will just get beside you. No, there is moment after moment in Scripture where it takes pleading, it takes begging, it takes a humbling of themselves physically and spiritually and mentally and emotionally to say, God, I can't do anything else. I'm at your mercy at this. Have your way. And then God moves. They come to Jesus and they're pleading. And Jesus goes with them. Can I bring you back to alignment for just a second? You won't plead if you don't understand your place. People who don't feel like they need to beg have misunderstood their place when it comes to faith. I think it's what's powerful about what happens next with the centurion. Because these people come pleading to Jesus on his behalf, and Jesus goes with them. And from every conclusion that I can draw from the passage, there's an indicator that the centurion, who should be the most powerful man in Capernaum, understands his place when it comes to Jesus. And I wonder if some of us have just forgotten our place. If we've gotten to a place where we just feel like God works for us. And God does our bidding. God makes our way. He wasn't far from the house when the centurion sent his friends to say to him, Lord, that's powerful, right? The centurion calling Jesus Lord. Everybody watching would have been like, wait a minute, hold on, something is absolutely wrong with this. They're calling you, like, no, this guy's in charge of Capernaum. Caesar has this man in charge of the province. He's Lord, but he's calling Jesus Lord. I mean, we throw the name around like it's nothing. Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I don't deserve to have you come under my roof. See, he knows his place. I don't deserve to have you come under The people who went pleading for him, the elders of the Jews, they were saying, this man deserves to have you under his roof. Now the man's going, I don't deserve to have you under my roof. I don't deserve for you to step a foot in my home. Verse 7, that's why I didn't even consider myself worthy to come to you. But Jesus, say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. That one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. For me, what's most powerful about the man's plead, even though he is pleading through people, is that he understands his place. He is recognizing, look, I don't have anything that makes me worthy to even be in your presence. I would rather send people to you and have you do what only you can do rather than me get out in front of you in a place that I'm not even worthy to be. That's just incredible. That the most powerful man in Capernaum would look at Jesus from Nazareth and know that he's more. I mean, talk about doing things that nobody else can do. Talking about changing things that nobody else can change. The centurion understands that his servant is dying. And no matter how much authority that the centurion has, he doesn't have the authority to save a dying man's life. But he believes that Jesus does. The key comes in verse 8, I had never seen this before I started studying the text, and this is why I think it's so powerful to me. The centurion says, "For I myself am a man under authority." That's what he said, right? I myself am a man under authority. You know what that means? He's comparing himself to Jesus. I never caught that. I too am a man under authority. What's he saying about Jesus? He's saying about Jesus, I know how you're doing what you're doing. I know how you're able to heal people who are sick and dying. I know how you're doing it. Jesus, I know how you're making blind people see. Jesus, I know how you're calling the deaf to hear. Jesus, I know how you're doing all this. You're operating under authority. I too am a man under authority. See, I know how this works. When I tell people go, they go. When I tell people to dig into a defensive position, man, my soldiers go to work and they dig into a defensive position. Jesus, I don't even have to be there. I can give the order from miles away and they'll start working. That's how my authority works. So if that's how my authority works, I understand how you're doing what you're doing. You're under authority. And that's exactly right. This is the thing that marveled Jesus. This is the thing that absolutely amazed Jesus, that the centurion understood this. See, to come up under authority means you got to be in alignment with that authority. So to be under authority, you got to be aligned with it. Otherwise, there may be an authority and a presence there, but if you're not underneath the authority, right, you may have recognition of it, but you're not in line with it. And when you're not in line with it or aligned with it, man, things are out of order. Now, I know I'm getting deep theologically here, but stay with me for just a moment, because see, God's a God of order. God's not a God of chaos. He's a God of order. This is important. This is really, really important right here. See, when things are out of order in our life, man, it messes up the flow of power between us and God. Now, I know that sounds like crazy probably to some. Maybe it even sounds a little Pentecostal when we start talking about power. But it's the truth, right? It's the reality that there is a power that some of us, we look at other people and go, man, look at the power of God at work in their life. And we look at another person who believes the exact same thing and it's not present. Why is it not present? Maybe it has to do with alignment. When the alignment gets messed up, it messes up the order. It messes up the power. God is a God of order. He is not a God of chaos. Jesus can step into chaos and bring it to order. Man, you can't do that without authority. You can't do that without power. Jesus is able to speak to a storm and bring the storm into order. Man, that's power over creation. That's incredible. Jesus can speak to the demon and bring the demon under order, under authority. Man, that's power over the demonic. That's a power we don't even understand, right, as we get ready for Halloween this week. Man, Jesus can speak to the blind man and bring sight into order. Man, that's power and authority over our lives. The centurion understands the limitations of his authority and power, but he understands something about Jesus. He believes that Jesus has power and authority over life itself. And that's incredible. Because if Jesus has power and authority over the life of his servant, don't you know that he can have power and authority in your life? Amen. And some of us need that. Like we know we need it. We want it. We want that power to be at work in us. For some of us, though, man, it's just an issue of alignment. It's kind of like the way electricity works. The light switch. If you took any high school physics class and you understand how this works, well, we learned this at Warren Central. Y'all might have not got taught that at Greenwood, but see, circuits work by alignment. Right? Circuits work by alignment. So the switch is designed in such a way that when it's in the on position, there is alignment between both of the wires. There's a hot wire, and then there's a wire that's leading up to the lights. But it brings all that into alignment so that the lights come on. When you put the switch in the opposition, it turns off the lights. And the reason why is because the alignment is broken, right? Things aren't aligned any longer. It messes up the power. Now, here's the thing, and you already know this. I just want to bring it to light this morning. Did you know there's power still there? Yes. The lights aren't on, but the power is still there. The power is still present in that wire in the wall, but it's not making the lights come on because the alignment's messed up. It's out of order, right? That's why we put out of order on things that don't work, because the order's messed up, the process is messed up, it's not working anymore, it's out of order. But now that's in order and the power is flowing and the lights are on. For some of you, man, the thing that's messed up in your life is not the power of God to do something. It's there, it's present, it's just the alignment is messed up. So some of you came to church this morning, man, and you are wanting, you are needing God to move in power. Not all of us. And it has nothing to do with your faith. You're just not in a place where you're helpless. You're just not in a place where you're hungry right now. You're just not in a place where you're desperate right now. But some of you, man, you came to church and you are desperate and you are hungry and you need God to move. If God doesn't do something, if God doesn't move in power because you've done everything else, you've exhausted all other options, God's let you get to that place so that he can have the glory and that he can have the power in it. But you're at the place right now that you're like, man, if God doesn't do something, you came this morning and man, your heart is filled with prayers. Not generic prayers. I mean, you got specific things that you're praying about right now. And these aren't prayers that could be answered if you would just work a little harder, because you've already tried all that. These are prayers that if God doesn't move, it doesn't matter how hard you work. These are prayers that are bold and they're audacious. And it's like if God answers them, the whole world will know that God answered that prayer. Like I will tell everybody, because there is no way I could have done that outside of him. You came to church this morning, man, and you've got prayers that you've been lifting up and that you brought here to lift up today. And you just need God to answer them. You're wanting God to answer them. And some of you came in this morning, you were singing about victory, and you've been praying about victory, and you've been wanting God to do something victorious in your life. But you're still waiting. And some of y'all have been waiting a while. Some of you have been waiting for a few months. Some of you have been waiting for a few years. And you keep believing for victory. And you keep praying for victory. You're wanting to see God bring about the victory, but it ain't happening. And I just wonder if it has to do more with alignment than power. Like I wonder if the power is there for your prayer to be answered, and the power is present for him to move in your life. And the power is there for you to have victory over whatever it is that you are trying to claim victory over there. But maybe the issue is alignment. It's kind of like the automatic doors, you know. Have you ever like been walking into Walmart or Target or Kroger, a place like that, but you weren't really paying attention? You were paying attention to your phone and walked right into the door. Not that I've done that. I'm just wondering if you've done that. Because you were expecting that door to open, because it always opened. It opened every other time. But in the moment, like you were distracted, because sometimes we can get distracted, and the distraction caused you to get out of alignment with the little sensor thing, and you weren't in line with it, and so the door didn't just automatically open for you, and you had to get over to get in alignment for the door to open. I'm preaching now, I really am. Don't you know that when you come under alignment of the authority of God, that he will open doors that God wouldn't open any other time in your life? I mean, don't you know that? Don't you know that when you are in alignment with him, man, God will open up some doors in your life. And I'm not talking about this is getting what you want or some kind of name it, claim it kind of faith. That's not what I'm talking about at all right now. Just don't you know that when you come under alignment of the authority of God, that he'll open up doors that you're not even expecting for God to open. He will move in ways that you couldn't imagine, that you couldn't even experience unless you were aligned with him. Let me show you how I know this, because I think this is a powerful place for us to end on this morning. This is verse 9. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I've not found such great faith even in Israel. This amazed Jesus, folks. Like this right here, this statement, this faith amazed Jesus. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house, and they found the servant well. There's only two other times in all of the Gospels that Jesus was amazed. Did you realize that? There's only two times, there's only two places in all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where the living God is amazed by men. And this is one of them. This is one of those moments. The other one happened just a few chapters earlier in Luke chapter 4. And it was at his hometown in Nazareth. But what happened at Nazareth was different than what happened at Capernaum. And you know what's crazy about the story? And again, I hadn't even thought about this until I started studying the passage. What's crazy about the story is that the people at Nazareth were wanting the same thing the centurion was wanting. They wanted him to do miracles. They wanted him to heal the sick. There were probably people who were there that day when Jesus was at Nazareth. There were probably people who were dying that day that had Jesus spoke into their life, had Jesus laid his hands on them, had Jesus done something that only Jesus could do, they would have lived beyond that moment, but he didn't. And people probably died in Nazareth that day because Jesus didn't do what only Jesus could do. The scripture says that when he left Nazareth, he was amazed. That's the second time. Not at their faith, at their lack of faith. And you know what's crazy? Man, he just got done reading from the prophet Isaiah. And this passage is so powerful. I love preaching this passage. This is Luke 4, verse 18. The Spirit of the Lord is on me. Not on me, Shane, on me, Jesus. Like Jesus was preaching this. This is happening right now, Jesus says. I'm fulfilling it right now. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And not one person in Nazareth experienced it that day. They wanted something from Jesus, but they were not willing to align themselves with him. And that's the difference between Nazareth and Capernaum. That's the difference between a bunch of homebred, life-living Jewish people who belong to the same God that they would have said the disciples belonged to, and the centurion who's not a kind of people that they are, who doesn't belong to the same religion, experiences the power of God in a way that they never did. Why? Because the centurion understood authority. They wanted something from Jesus, but they weren't willing to become aligned with Jesus. Listen, I don't know what you came in here wanting today, but I'm just wondering if some of the reasons why your tower keeps falling, I'm just wondering if some of the reasons why your tower keeps getting knocked down, it's because of alignment. You know, it's not that you don't believe that God's power is present for him to do what only he can do. It's just that things, it's like we keep you know, sometimes life is like this, right? You keep building the tower and it keeps falling down, and it's like sometimes it falls and you're not even expecting it, and sometimes it's wobbling and you're just waiting for the moment for it to fall over. And it's not about a lack of power on God's part, it's just about alignment. And we're not going where God wants us to go because we just won't get our lives in alignment with his. But when you can align yourself with the power of God, man, that's what opens up the flow. And for some of you, the flow is all jacked up right now because your head's right, but your heart ain't right. Your heart's right, but your head isn't right. You got your heart and your head right, but somehow there's something creeping into the behavior, and the behavior's wrong. You got your head right, but your desire's messed up. But I'm telling you, when your head and your heart and your desire and your appetite and your whatever comes in alignment up under the authority of the Father, man, God will take towers higher than you could ever imagine. And the wind will come, and the rain will come and beat against that house, but it won't fall because it had its foundation built upon the rock. That's right. So, let's quit playing with blocks. And let's get aligned with God. Okay? I don't know what you need today. I don't know what you want God to do, but I know what you need if I can be so bold for a minute, whether I'm your pastor or I'm not. You need to be aligned with Jesus. You need to be aligned with Jesus. And so that's the invitation today. Get your alignment fixed. Right now. Welcome to Jiffy Lube. No charge today. Let God have his way. Hey, there's some of you in here this morning that you don't have a relationship with Jesus, and we can't even talk about realignment. Some of y'all, that's where you're at. You just need to be realigned because some things have gotten out of place. But for some of you, man, you need to be aligned with God right now in the name of Jesus. And so I want to invite you to that, okay? And I don't know of any kind of magical thing that we can do in this moment, but I always invite people to pray, because prayer is this amazing gift that God has given us to communicate with him. And I'll tell you what, right now, that if you will call upon the name of the Lord, if you will call upon Jesus' name, and you will just declare and say to him right now that you're aligning your life with his, man, God will move in power. Did you know that? And God will save you, and God will change your life right here, right now. And that's the invitation. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? If that's you, if who I was talking about is you, I want to invite you to pray with me right now. You can pray this prayer to yourself. You can pray it out loud. But just pray with me. Lord Jesus,